OG Rose, and today we're going to be talking about belonging in section 37. We have been discussing the issue where today everyone has to be an existentialist, everyone has to be a philosopher, everyone has to be someone of whom can speculatively reason, to use a Hegelian term, in order to determine their foundations, their values, who they can be, an absolute knower, to be an absolute knower, to be a Nietzschean child. But there's a problem because how can everyone be creating their own values or intrinsically motivated and not break down the social order? Because if everyone's making their own values, when everyone shares, say, Christianity, they have a shared intelligibility. You can have kind of a natural coordination with people that doesn't require nearly as much thinking or negotiations because, for example, your employer is going to let you off for Christmas because it's a Christian nation. You don't have to think about what if they don't let me off for Christmas. And a million more, a lot more examples could be made. So values and shared values lead to shared thinking leads to shared coordination, and if everyone's creating their own values, how is shared coordination possible? Well, this is a huge question, and it leads us into the question and nature of character itself. Because a Nietzschean child is a kind of character. People think people don't have character today, but is that true, and what is character? And we've started exploring this topic because it would seem, given the conflict of society and the value circle, that once givens break, you really can't bring them back very well or very easily unless people learn to live with and be comfortable with created givens, which is a kind of contradiction, a kind of paradox, where they create for themselves givens and give them authority, give them a kind of law over them, like Nietzsche talks about, where you create your own good and evil and hang it around your neck like a law. Is that possible? How can you do it? And you see, even if it was possible, how is it that we have everyone create givens for themselves that are enough like one another somehow, or at least able to relate to one another in such a manner that shared coordination, shared intelligibility can occur? If this cannot occur, I think there's just going to be radical atomization, and this has come up in a number of conversations. I believe that this trajectory is well pointed out or kind of highlighted by Japan. I think Japan is basically what the entire world is going in the direction of. And I'm not trying to bash Japan, because as I've talked with Zabuba and other people, I think Japan is probably the greatest source of artistic and creative production in the world in terms of story, in terms of music, and so on. But it does tend to be the case when you go in a very atomized direction. Basically, art has to fill the role of religion. It has to fill the role of metaphysics and metaphysical values. And so that creates an incentive to become masters at it and to do it very well. But that mastery of the arts could be incentivized by a societal collapse. It could be hiding that societal collapse, or dialectically informed by that societal collapse. And I think that is what is occurring with Japan. Obviously, they have a demographic crisis, and we see Western nations that are westernizing tend to have falling birth rates. Well, I would say falling birth rate, there's many factors that contribute to it, but certainly the difficulty of relating to other people and in a manner that leads to shared coordination is going to make it hard for people to be married, hard for people to live together, all of which will work against birth rates. So that's something to keep in mind. And if collapsing birth rates basically means a doomed economy, well, then we have a major problem here. But before all of that, we have to explore what is character. James Hunter, in his book, The Death of Character, which will be elaborated on in the next section, basically says character is no longer possible, only moral platitudes, which are not the same. And he says the social and cultural conditions that make character possible are no longer present. Character is now an impossibility. And the last part is me. Now, Philip Reeve has told us that the triumph of the therapeutic society is one word, is forbidden to forbid. And to me, that is a kind of moral system. The ethic against forbidding it is a kind of moral system. And if indeed there is a moral system, and I'm not making hard distinctions here between ethics and morality, though I know those distinctions can be made, if that is still around, then there's a moral order relative to which it would seem character would be possible, right? So why or why not? What is wrong with the ethic against forbidding? Well, the problem of it may be is that basically the ethic against forbidding means everyone needs to be left alone. You shouldn't forbid people from doing what they want to do, what expresses them, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. So, there's an ethic against forbidding. The issue with that is where one's moral order is themselves. Then this means the no that Philip Reeve talks about that we need to form as subjects is merged with the will. So the no is a yes/no. I choose what I want to do, and I set up as forbidding what people can't do to me and what I can't do to others in terms of will in therapy. So it's a very weak no. It's a no that's kind of an expression of a will. It is not a no that's, say, transcendent of the subject, that has authority over the subject, non-conditionally outside the subject, which of course would be something like a God or a religious notion. And so this ethic against forbidding has a lot of therapy in its, therapeutic dimensions in its very no, in its very restrictions, of which means that when I engage in that forbidding, I'm actually just expressing my will and my own will. Now, what's so interesting about this is, again, the ethic against forbidding seems so close to the Nietzschean will, to the creation of values. But the difference, and indeed, there is something about the ethic against forbidding that is true, that has a role to play. Indeed, there's something about letting people be themselves and unfold as they should that is very important. But the question becomes, is there any dialectic working through negativity, to use a kind of a Hegelian phrase, in an ethic against forbidding? Or is it simply a space in which people can express their individuality, their will, their wants? If it is nothing more than a space in which people can express their will, well, again, that's going to be very therapeutic. And also a problem might be when you have this kind of emphasis on expression of the individual and ethics against forbidding, it might be very difficult to determine what negativity we should work through. Versus what negativity is an act of forbidding. Like when you feel negativity, it can feel like you're being restricted. Well, why not just claim that that's immoral and wrong and ignore it, as opposed, or say that someone else who's causing you to feel that way is in the wrong, as opposed to working through that. Working through negativity and facing the real. And also when you face like a divine no, that's going to force you, in, say, a religious culture in the past, that's going to force you to work through negativity and come to terms with yourself. And if there's an ambiguity, a kind of ambiguity in what negativity you should work through and what not, that's probably going to weaken the development of character. That's going to weaken the development of character in the subject. And I'm using those a little bit interchangeably here. And if it does weaken that, then the kind of character that could emerge out of the ethic against forbidding is probably going to be weak. So it would seem as if, although there's truth to the idea that people should be allowed to unfold as they so desire, if that is merely on the pretense of a moral system of ethic against forbidding, which is very negative, right? It's not necessarily telling you what to do. This may not be robust enough to help people develop character. Indeed, character is located in the ethic against forbidding, mostly against standing up against bigotry or discrimination. You have character if you fight a social injustice. You have character if you fight oppression. And indeed, these are matters of character. But if those are the only or the main or the prime characteristics of this ethic, then it could be very individualized, where every individual to themselves have to decide what they believe is an injustice and fight against that, of which then other people may not agree, and that could lead to social fragmentation. So the kind of character you see in the ethic, and also, if indeed the ethic is against forbidding, givens are fundamentally a forbidding function. They are a constraint. They constrain. Well, then the very ethic is against the givens the society needs to function. And so the ethics could also turn on that. And this is where, like, in the Nietzschean child or the absolute knower, it's not the case that forbidding is always bad. There is a role for allowing. Well, there is a role for forbidding. You forbid yourself, or you forbid how you relate to other people, even if it is against you and it is not in your interest, because that forces you to work through negativity. And there really is a sense where the ethic against forbidding is more about letting people just be and express themselves in a way that they so desire, as opposed to forcing them to work on themselves. The ethic against forbidding is basically saying that we can't make claims. So, for example, if you're a Christian, you think that there are certain forms of how the society should run that everyone should oblige to. Well, an ethic against forbidding would be to say the Christian cannot make claims on what other people should or should not do. And again, there can be a lot of truth to that, but that doesn't necessarily say that individuals need to put over themselves something higher than themselves according to which they develop themselves. They may or may not within that space, but not necessarily. So in a kind of Nietzschean conception of the child, yeah, you're going to have leaving people alone. There's going to be a certain distancing from the authority you can put over other people because they must be left to create their own values. But the emphasis is not on the expression of freedom of the individual according to their own standards. The individual must work through negativity, and it's not necessarily clear that ethics against forbidding is going to have that working through negativity. You could perhaps say that the ethic against forbidding is going to put a lot of emphasis on opposing things that oppress people, which is a good thing. But without the Nietzschean and Hegelian side, you may not have an emphasis on working through one's own negativity. So that emphasis on oppression versus negativity is an issue. And again, it's very important to stop oppression. But to have that be the kind of the predominant way of thinking or the only source of developing character may go too far and destroy just givens in general, of which would erase the possibility of character, other than a very anarchist sense defined by the ethic, the kind of disembodied ethic at that point, or the ethic that cannot be socialized of the EAF, as the section will talk about the ethic against forbidding. So this would get into why Philip Rieff, when he calls this ethic against forbidding a kind of anti-culture, it would make sense. Now, again, we can go too far and never oppose givens, which then leads to oppression. And the problem is precisely we got rid of givens because, indeed, people were oppressed and it was wrong. And so this is why we're in the situation we're in. And so we're now examining the value of the ethics against forbidding, but why it's not complete enough to take us to the place where we can create our own givens, and in that give them authority over ourselves without also at the same time losing the ability to relate to other people according to their own values. And so we have to keep thinking. For more by O.J. Rose, please visit ojrose.com for the complete Belonging Again playlist. You can find it on YouTube, and on Medium there's a list of these sections. Thank you so much for your time.